Hi everybody, in this video we're going to build a REST API with Java or in Java using the Spring Boot Framework and Maven as the packager, as the application packager, packaging the application. Let's get started. So as prerequisites you need Java, of course, on your machine. I have Java 17. Both the JRE runtime environment and the JDK are installed. I can also run Javac, Java compiler version. It will return the same version, 17.081. And also you need Maven. So I have Maven 394. And that's it for prerequisites. And the first website I'm going to show you is Spring Initializer. And here you can initialize your Spring application. You can select the package manager or the packager. I'm going to select Maven, language Java, Spring Boot version 3.1.4 is okay for me. Then some metadata like group, artifact, name, description, package name. And then the packaging format should be var in my case, and Java 17 is okay as well. And another slick feature is here to add dependencies. So if you know already what kind of dependencies you need, most of the times you already know that you need some development tools or some database dependencies to connect to MySQL or Postgres or whatever. So there are a lot of dependencies that you can go through, also for observability, big topic, tracing, testing, etc. But in this tutorial we are going to have 0 dependencies for the beginning, just to show you. So we will add the dependencies during our coding, just to show you what or which dependency is for what purpose. And for now we are going to select generate. This will create the zip file for us containing all the file structure, folder structure, including the main function. So we are extracting this in the same downloads folder, in this case show the files demo, and we are importing that in our Visual Studio Code demo. Now we have it in VS Code. We have this folder structure with source, main and test. In main there's a Java com example demo application file with a main function, and then you have some application properties to set some properties if you want. We're not going to use it today. And then the test folder, in the target folder, Maven will create the jar file, the output basically. And very important is also pom.xml. This is the file where you say to Maven what kind of framework you use, Spring Boot Framework, which version you use, 3.1.4, some metadata, and then of course Java version and the dependencies. You see now here we use only like Spring Boot Framework and the test dependency to do some tests, but nothing else. And yeah, let's go ahead and run this application in the current state. I have installed some Maven and Spring Boot extensions for Visual Studio Code, but I'm also going to show you the same commands in the command line tool, in the command line interface. So here run Maven commands package to package the whole source code and the application. By the way, let's also look into the we already saw that, but that's the main function and the pom.xml. So here Maven is building and scanning and looking at the files for errors, doing some tests if you have the tests, and there's some example test already with that dependency that you saw here. So at the end it will create this jar file in the target folder, and let's look at it here. You cannot look at it because it's a jar, but you can run it. So let's run it. Java is our application. Here in Visual Studio Code you are gonna see, there we go, we have our Spring Boot application, and it finished already. So there is nothing that listens, no web server on a certain port, because we don't have any web server configured yet. So that will be our next step, to have a REST API that listens on a port for requests, basically. Because a web server or a REST API without listening on a port is not a REST server or REST API. So with that, for that we are searching in Maven repository. This is by the way one of the cool websites that you maybe need to search for dependencies for Maven plugins and dependencies. In this case I'm typing Spring Boot web or web server, and there we go. This is something I was looking for, Spring Boot starter web. I'm gonna use 310 here. Let me copy that and just paste it. Let me also explain what this is doing in a moment. Okay, formatting a little bit. And so this is a starter for building web including RESTful applications using Spring MVC, and it uses Tomcat as the Apache Tomcat as the web server. So with that we would have something that listens on a port and is accessible for clients to use that service, basically. Now let's package again the code, create a new jar file, and then run that jar file. By the way, depending on the amount of dependencies and your code base, this step is taking sooner or longer. For me, I just have 2-3 dependencies and it's fine, but if you have more dependencies, larger code base, then this might take a little bit longer. Now we have a new jar file and we can run this. Oops, selecting it, run. So we have an application running on port 8080. It's Apache Tomcat, the starting servlet engine, Apache Tomcat, initializing Spring embedded web application context, doing some logs, and then telling us just that we have an HTTP port on 8080. Yeah, let's access our application, localhost 8080. So there we go. We have something that is listening on 8080. We see some error page, but that's okay. The reason is that we don't have a specific error page. So this is just shown as a white label error page, as a fallback error page, because we didn't define anything on the root endpoint. But that's okay. So let's add some endpoints. For example, yeah, let's go to this folder here or this file and then create another file. Just let's call it sample controller.java, and here let's add some methods or some endpoints. For that I'm googling a little bit, Spring Boot sample controller or sample endpoint. You can just search for it, and here we see here get mapping, paste it here, and then this should be annotated with REST controller. This class should be annotated with REST controller to say, hey, this file is a REST controller, and I have a method called index. It's returning a string, greetings from Spring Boot, and this is annotated with get mapping on root. So now the root endpoint should not return an error, but instead greetings. So let's use that. Upsala, where do I have it? So now it will not work because we have to recompile. We have to recompile it, but yeah, let's do that basically. I'm shutting down the application, but now let's do the same commands in our terminal to see how this works in our terminal. So our application is in downloads demo, and here I do Maven clean first to show you that the target folder will be deleted with a clean command. So here you can see no target folder. And if I run Maven package, it creates this target folder and packages the whole application into that. Oh, compilation failure. REST controller. REST controller. Oh, probably I need some dependency. No. Do I have the right annotation? REST controller. Oh, I didn't save the file. I need to save the file. I believe I didn't have the import. So now that I saved it, let's run it again. Maven package. It should work. Yeah, 0 failures, test run 1, errors 0, skipped 0. That's okay. Now you can see the target folder is created, and inside the target folder you can see the jar file in red. And now you have two possibilities to run this jar file. You can search for it, either java -jar and then the jar file to run it. Let's zoom out a little bit to see each log line in a separate line. But that's fine now. It's running, and on root you can see now greetings from Spring Boot. So we have our root endpoint. Basically, this is root. The slash after the port is root, and greetings from Spring Boot. So here we have now our first endpoint, and with this manner we can add more endpoints. So for example, hello world, smiley, and delete the rest. And then you have to rerun everything. But you can also add a development tool to do live reloading. Let's actually do that. Let's search for it, because it's really cumbersome to add really small features to your code base and then call Maven package and run the jar file again and again. So for that, there's a Spring Boot DevTools dependency. There we go, Spring Boot DevTools, developer tools. that is really cool for live coding and adding code changes into the application. So now I added the dependency, and if I run it again, package it again, it should have the new dependency included. And if I do code changes, then it's doing live reloadings, hot reloading, or what is it called, and I don't have to call the Java or compile the code again. This was one version how to call the the jar file. The other version could be Maven Spring Boot Run. This one. This is doing the same. It's looking for the jar file in the target folder and it's calling it. Yeah, there we go. We have it now. So now let's go to root and as well as to localhost hello. How did I write it? Just hello world. Hello world. Yeah, this is the second endpoint that we have now. So we have two endpoints, and in this manner I can add more. And by the way, all these endpoints are get endpoints. You can also do post endpoints and put endpoints. Check out my other video about REST APIs to understand the other verbs in a REST API application. But here I can do v2, another endpoint, another one, hello, double smiley if you want. And here, hopefully, yes, you can see the changes are added to the code, and you don't need to recompile it again and run the application again. It should work like this. v2, what was it? v2 another endpoint, v2 another and another endpoint. There we go. Hello, double smiley. Yeah, so we now have a REST API code skeleton with 3 example get endpoints. We have it. We use Java, Spring Boot Framework for Java, and we use Maven for the packager. And now I show you another dependency that's really great to create a dashboard for your application. With that, you don't have an overview what kind of endpoints you have, right? And if you search for Spring Boot 3 Open API, then you hopefully find the dependency that's using the API Open API 3 specification. So here, there we go. Spring Doc Open API Starter Web MVC UI. And what is this? So a short overview here. This is a good short overview. Documentation is an essential part of building REST APIs. In this tutorial, we'll look at Spring Doc, which simplifies the generation and maintenance of API docs based on the API 3 specification for Spring Boot 3 application. So I'm using Spring Boot 3. Here, Spring Boot 3.1.4. And Open API 3 is a specification that specifies how to generate and maintain the API documentation. And API documentation is basically to say what kind of endpoints do I have, what is the name of my API, what are the metadata, etc., etc. And this is really cool because in this version, in Open API 3 specification, there's Swagger UI integrated, and we will see that in a moment. So let's add this dependency to our pod file, pod XML. So here I'm adding it, and sometimes if you add new dependencies, the live reloading is not working. So let's see if that worked or not. By the way, let's look in the documentation or in that webpage here. You have here in under v3 API docs, this is another endpoint that's added to your REST API. All the documentation basically. So let's try that out. Okay, we have an error page because the live reloading is not working if you add new dependencies. But if you add new code in your existing Java files, like you saw before, it's working great. But let's package it again. And while this is running, okay, it's finished already. Now Maven Spring Boot run. Spring, there we go. Okay, live reload service running on port blah 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 blah, port 80. Nothing special, but here v3 API docs. So here it says, after setting up the dependency correctly, we can run our application and find the Open API description at v3 API docs endpoint. Okay, which is the default path, and you can change that path if you want. But this is basically if you see it in raw data, this is the documentation for now for your REST API. If you have a JSON beautifier, then it looks like this. And it also has a UI, the Swagger UI integrated. So if you access this endpoint, Swagger UI index.html, then you see a visualization of your API documentation. So this is it. Open API definition is used, Open API specification 3. Then you see your server running on port 8080. And then here, sample controller. This is the file that we have here, sample controller. And with those 3 endpoints that are listed here, all get endpoints, get mapping. You can also do post and put and delete endpoints, and they will be in other colors. But here you can see the root endpoint, for example. And the good thing is you can also try them out. Look here, try it out, execute, and there will be the answer from that endpoint. Greetings from Spring Boot. And also there's a sample curl command that you can run in your command line interface if you want. New tab. That's doing the same basically. Greetings from Spring Boot. So this is really great for testing and debugging, and also for getting a good overview of your application if you come back 3 months later. And this is great to get again an overview what you did 3 months ago and what kind of endpoints you have. And also really helpful for if you have like a bigger application with other team members working on a application that consists out of like several components, and each of you understand each other's REST API with this overview basically. Should be one of the must-haves if you work with Spring Boot frameworks. I'm sure there are also other visualizations, but this is one of the most popular ones if you work with Spring Boot applications. Cool. So now I think we're done with this video. We have built a REST API from scratch using the Spring initializer. We used Maven as the packager. In Java, like the application is in Java. Yeah, I'm just summarizing all the stuff we did today. We showed you, or you saw the Swagger UI. You integrated the OpenAPI specification to your application. You have 3 endpoints, for example, the root endpoint, then hello world, and etc. etc. That's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Please subscribe if you didn't do so far. Like and share the video, and let me know in the comments if you want to have more of such videos. With that, have a good one, and bye bye.